This video is an affiliation with Collingwood Insurance. More on that one later, but for now, what is double clutching? Well, basically every time you change gear, you have to push the clutch down and lift it up twice, as if once wasn't enough. So how do you do it and why would you do it? So I'm now in my learner car to show you how to do double clutching. I'm going to go up to third gear. I'm in second gear. So the first thing I'll do, and I'll do it slowly to begin with, is I'll come off the gas, clutch down, put it to neutral, clutch up, clutch down into third, and then clutch up the way you would normally bring the clutch up carefully so that you don't jerk the car. When you go up a gear, you don't have to blip the throttle when the clutch is up the first time. But when you go down a gear, you do have to blip the throttle when the clutch is up the first time. Now I say clutch up the first time because you have to bring the clutch up twice. So I'm going to go down into second gear now. I'm going to show you how that works. So I will have to blip the throttle. So I'll come off the gas, clutch down into neutral, clutch up, blip the throttle, clutch down into second, and clutch up to the bite point carefully again as you would when you go down a gear. And remember, it is very important to bring the clutch up carefully when you do go down gears. So when you go up gears, you come off the gas, clutch down, put it to neutral, clutch up, and you don't blip the throttle for up gears. Clutch down again, change into the gear you want, and then clutch up carefully again. That's how you do double clutching when you're going up gears. To go down gears, you have to blip the throttle. So off gas, clutch down, into neutral, clutch up, blip the throttle, clutch down into your lower gear, and then clutch up carefully again. You may have to rev match when you go down gears, but that's a whole different thing. Click on the top right hand corner of your screen to know about rev matching. So I'm going to show you that again slowly and then quickly. I'll talk you through it slowly, but I can't talk you through it quickly because there's too many words for how many actions that happen. So I'm going to go up a gear, so I come off the gas, clutch down to neutral, clutch up, clutch down into the higher gear, then clutch up carefully and add a little bit of gas. And I'm going to go down a gear, so off the gas, clutch down into neutral, clutch up, blip the throttle, clutch down into the lower gear, and then carefully off the clutch, adding a little bit of gas as I'm slowing down and I don't want to slow down. So now I'm going to show you it quickly so you can see that even though there's an awful lot to do, and I'm saying an awful lot, it can be done quite quickly when you get experienced. So I'm going to go up to third gear. I'm not going to say anything, I'm just going to show you because I can't talk that quickly. There's third gear, and I'm going to go back down to second gear. There we are, up to third, without the throttle blip because I'm going up a gear, and then down to second, which will need the throttle blip because I'm going down a gear. There we go. What you need to know is the first time you lift the clutch, you can lift it incredibly quickly. But the second time you lift the clutch, you have to lift it as carefully as you would do normally in a modern car. So if I go up to third now, I can lift the clutch very quickly the first time, but then I've got to be careful the second time, like so. Up quick, and then the second time I'm careful. And now if I go back down a gear, again I can come off the clutch really quickly the first time, but I've got to be extra careful coming off the clutch the second time because I am going down a gear. And whenever you go down a gear, you've got to lift the clutch up carefully when you've engaged that gear. So I'm going to go down a gear now, quick, but now I'll go slow off the clutch to let the rev matching happen so I don't jerk the car. I'll go up a gear again, no blip of the throttle needed. I'm going to go down a gear again, but this time I'll very quickly come off the clutch, blip the throttle, but the second time I come off the clutch, we'll be careful, like this. And then carefully off the clutch now, let it rev match, then I can come off the clutch fully. So now for the more tricky bit of explaining why you'd want to do that. Well, you probably don't want to go through all that malarkey of doing all that when you change gear. You don't need to. There are two scenarios when you would need to do that. If you're driving an old car without synchro meshes in the gearboxes, also known as synchros or synchronizers. Or if your modern car had very worn synchronizers. They're the two times you're going to need to do this, which is probably very unlikely because synchronizers became popular in the 70s. So if you're driving a car from the 1970s onwards, it's probably got synchronizers in all the gears. If you're driving a car from the 60s, it's probably got synchronizers in all or most of the gears, because they're a bit stingy at first. It seems they only ever used to put them in some gears but not all the gears. That doesn't make sense to me. It's obviously a packaging issue or a price issue. If you're driving a pre-60s car, then you're probably going to need to double clutch to change gear well. If your car's gearbox wears out, which is very rare, I mean, this gearbox has done a lot. This has done 163,000, just under 163,000 miles now. And I change gear a lot in this, and I teach people to drive, and it gets all the time constant gear changing for no reason, just for practice, yet the synchronizers are just fine in this one. However, even though the synchronizers in this car are still fine after many miles, some cars have what are known as chocolate gearboxes, where they do wear out quite quickly. I'm not going to name and shame any, but I do know of some. I've driven a couple of them, and I've driven a car with only 80,000 miles on it where second gear had a worn synchro, and if you wanted to avoid crunching the gears, you had to double clutch until the gearbox got warm, until the engine heated up the gearbox and it was all nice and warm and the oil was a bit better, and then it went in easy. And I even did an oil change on the gearbox and it was still like that. So it wasn't just a case of changing the oil, it was a worn synchro. So now I'm going to try and attempt to explain what this synchro is in the gearbox, what it actually does, and why, if you have one, you don't need to double clutch. So it's all about gear matching. Now, you don't need to worry about gear matching in a modern car because the synchros do that for you. So let's take this finger. This is one gear. This finger is another gear, and they're moving at different speeds. So that's the way it is. When you change gears, the gears are moving at different speeds and you need to mesh them together. So as you push it into, say, third, and you try and connect these two gears together, one's going to hit the other because one is going faster than the other, as you can see there. And that makes that sound as you're trying to get it in gear because they're hitting each other. What you want them to be doing is doing the same speed, so when they come together, they lock and mesh together smoothly without hitting and banging against each other and chipping bits of metal off. And that's what a synchro does. As you push it together, it lines up the speed so they're exactly the same speed, and then they mesh together. If you don't have a synchro, lifting the clutch up will then give you control of this slow finger here, and then you can rev the engine to make it go faster. You let go of the gas, it will slow down, and then it will be slow again. So you come off the clutch with it in neutral, so this finger can spin a bit faster, or go up and down in this case a bit faster, but it represents the engine spinning, and it matches the speed. You push the clutch down again, you put it in gear, and hopefully you got them the same speed, and you push them together. You're not always going to get it right though. You're going to over rev it or under rev it, which will make that sound again, but that's why double clutching does take a lot of practice. I was cheating when I was double clutching because my car has synchro meshes, so it doesn't matter if I gave too many revs or too little revs, it will still go into gear just fine, and that's why it's completely pointless doing it in this car. There's really no need to. Now, I know that's a simplified version, and you're not actually changing the gear speed because they're always connected, you're changing the speed of the gear to the output shaft. But don't think about that, you don't need to worry about that. Just knowing you've got two gears at two different speeds is all you need to know to understand the principles. They're at two different speeds, you need to make them the same speed before you can connect them together. A synchro mesh on a modern car will do that for you, or if you haven't got that or it's worn, putting it into neutral and coming off the clutch means you can then use the revs, the gas, to match the gears yourself. A good clue though, if you're going up a gear, you want your revs to go down by about 500 RPM from where they started before you push the clutch down. If you're going down a gear, you want your revs to go up by around about 1,000 before you push the clutch down. So if you're at 2,000 RPM, you want to go down a gear, try and rev it up to about 3, maybe a bit more, maybe 3.5 before you try and go down a gear and then lift the clutch back up again. That is a very rough guide though, and it's going to be different in different cars, and it's going to be different depending on how fast you go in each gear as well. The faster you go in each gear, the bigger the rev difference when you change gear. But it is a skill. This is a very difficult skill to master. It takes a lot of trial and error. Unless you drive cars without synchro meshes regularly, you're probably not going to gain that skill, if I'm honest. I've not gained that skill because I've never actually driven a car without a synchro mesh. They're quite hard to get hold of these days. Well, I hope this video helps you understand what double clutching is and why you probably don't need to worry about it. If you think the video does, please give it a thumbs up and check out my sponsors Collingwood and Confused.com. Collingwood are great if you're learning to drive and you want to insure yourself on a friend or family member's car, which I recommend you do because it does shorten how many hours you're going to have with your driving instructor, so it can reduce how much you spend on learning to drive. Why Collingwood are so great and why I promote them is because you can insure yourself on somebody else's car without affecting their policy, so they don't have to worry about their own policy and their no claims bonus if something was to go wrong. It is a separate policy, and there is long-term and short-term policies available. You can insure yourself on somebody else's car, but you can also insure your own car if you want to also. And if you cancel the long-term policy, there is a pro rata refund if you say pass your test before the policy finishes. So if you say use 3 months of your 12-month policy, you can get the 9 months back. There is an admin fee in there as well when you do that, but it's worth considering both short-term and long-term policies. At the moment, there's up to 35% off via the link and a £20 Amazon gift card if you use that link, and it does support this channel if you use the link. I do recommend though always shopping around when it comes to insurance, so check out Confused.com as well to see how they compare. They're often very competitive. Again, using the link does support this channel. If you want to get my future videos, please subscribe. And until the next one, cheerio.